Hey there, friend. Richie G's on the move again. Taking steps to clear the mind, leaving worries far behind, where every path feels like home, and you never walk alone. It's a welcome, open space, lit by kindness, filled with grace. Yeah, everybody get to know Jesus' name. Everybody gets to know Jesus' name.
So imagine for a second that you are a high-powered crisis PR manager,
Okay, I can picture that.
and your newest client is this massive historical figure, like a beloved leader, basically a national hero.
Right, a really big deal.
Yeah, exactly. So you ask to see their official biography, and you're expecting the usual, sanitized, glowing list of achievements.
Standard political spin.
Right. But instead, they hand you this document that just brutally, painstakingly details their absolute worst, most catastrophic failures.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And not just, like, minor political missteps. We're talking profound moral collapses, complete with all the devastating collateral damage.
That is definitely not what a PR manager wants to see.
No, not at all. You'd probably tell them to, I don't know, burn the manuscripts and start over. But the thing is, the scribes of ancient Israel, they didn't burn it. They published it.
They really did.
So today, we're doing a deep dive into a text that breaks basically every single rule of ancient royal propaganda by meticulously detailing its greatest heroes' worst moral failures. We are examining the scriptural account of King David.
And it's a phenomenal text to analyze, precisely because it violates everything we know about the ancient Near East.
How so?
Well, if you look at the surrounding cultures, like the Egyptians, the Babylonians, the Assyrians, their kings were practically deified in their official records.
Like they were literal gods.
Exactly. Their monuments, they only record flawless victories. I mean, they literally chiseled over their defeats if they lost a battle.
That's wild. Just acting like it never happened.
Yeah, but the sources we're drawing from today, they treat David's life as almost this clinical examination of human frailty.
Right.
They actually expose the psychology behind his disobedience and, the mechanics of his course correction.
Which really sets up this wild tension that we're going to unpack today. Because if you're listening to this, you probably know the Sunday school summary, right?
Sure. David and Goliath.
Right. David defeated Goliath. He became king. He's known as a man after God's own heart. But the source material, it forces us to grapple with a much heavier reality.
It really does.
It's this dynamic between receiving total spiritual forgiveness, but still having to live through the brutal earthly blast radius of your actions.
That's a great way to put it.
So let's start with the impulsive failures.
Yeah.
Decisions made in a state of just pure survival instinct.
Yeah. So the first major recorded failure happens when David he's basically a lone fugitive.
Right. He's on the run.
Exactly. He is fleeing for his life from a deeply paranoid King Saul. And he arrives at the tabernacle in a town called Nob, just completely desperate.
And he runs into the high priest there, Ahimelech.
Yes. And that's where things go wrong.
Right, because David lies. He just straight up lies to the guy.
Yeah.
He claims he's on this highly classified secret mission for King Saul.
Which is the exact opposite of the truth.
Right. And he asks for food and a weapon.
Mm-hmm.
And Ahimelech, believing him, gives him the holy showbread and the sword of Goliath.
Which is a massive deal on its own.
Well, wait, let's pause here for a second. For a listener who isn't like an ancient historian or a theologian, what is the actual significance of him eating that specific bread?
That's a really good question.
Like, is he breaking some kind of major taboo just to get a meal?
He absolutely is. So the showbread, or the bread of the presence, it consisted of 12 freshly baked loaves that were placed in the sanctuary every Sabbath.
Okay.
And according to Levitical law, it was strictly reserved for the priests. Nobody else could eat it.
So he's crossing a serious line.
Yeah, by demanding it, David is breaking a very clear ritual boundary. But, in a life or death survival situation, the human brain justifies compromises incredibly easily.
Right, survival mode kicks in.
Exactly. He needs calories, and he needs a weapon. The problem is, and this is where the text pivots, he wasn't the only one in the room.
Right. There's a guy named Doeg the Edomite who was there, just watching the whole exchange.
Yes.
Okay, another technical detail here that I want to unpack. Why does the text go out of its way to specify that Doeg is an Edomite?
It's a very intentional detail.
Like, why does his lineage matter to this betrayal?
It matters deeply because the Edomites were historically enemies of Israel.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so Doeg is an outsider who has somehow risen to be Saul's chief herdsman.
Okay, so he's got status.
Right, but he has zero religious reverence for the Israelite priests and absolutely zero loyalty to David. He's the ultimate political opportunist.
He just sees a chance to advance himself.
Exactly. He sees David compromising the high priest, and he knows this piece of intelligence is basically a golden ticket to curry favor with a very paranoid king.
And the fallout from that intelligence is just staggering.
It's horrific.
Because Doeg reports back, and Saul's reaction is entirely disproportionate. He orders the slaughter of Ahimelech, 85 other priests, and then the entire town of Nob.
The whole town.
Men, women, children, even the livestock. It's a complete massacre.
Yes.
Just think about the mechanics of that for a second. You tell a split-second lie just to get some calories in a sword so you don't die in the wilderness, and it triggers this, geopolitical avalanche that buries an entire city of innocent people.
It's the ultimate butterfly effect.
Exactly. So how does a leader even begin to process that level of guilt?
Well, that is the pivotal psychological moment for David in this story. When Abiathar, he's the one surviving priest who manages to escape, when he tells David what happened, David doesn't deflect.
He doesn't make excuses.
No. I mean, a lesser leader would have spun the narrative, right? They would have said, well, Saul's a madman, Doeg is a monster. I had no way of knowing this would happen.
Which, to be fair, is kind of true, but it's not the whole truth.
Right. But David owns it entirely. His immediate response is, I have occasioned the death of all the persons of your father's house.
Wow.
He recognizes that his micro-compromise, that little lie, created the vacuum for this tragedy to happen.
Hold on, though. I want to push back on this narrative of David taking humble ownership.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because the source material immediately contrasts this with a completely different kind of impulsive failure.
Ah, you're talking about Nabal.
Yes, we jump forward to the story of Nabal. So David now has this militia of about 400 men, and they've been protecting this wealthy guy Nabal's flocks.
Right, out in the wilderness.
And when David asks for some provisions in return, just as a customary thank you, Nabal straight up insults him.
He really disrespects him.
Yeah. And David's reaction is to arm his 400 men and swear a blood oath to massacre Nabal's entire household.
It's a massive escalation.
It feels entirely out of character. I mean, this is the same David who famously crept into King Saul's camp and refused to kill him when he had the perfect chance.
Right, he cut the corner of his robe instead.
Exactly. So why does one rude, wealthy guy trigger a murderous blood oath? What is the psychological trigger here?
It is a jarring shift, isn't it? But psychologically, if you really look at it, it makes perfect sense.
How so?
Well, with Saul, David saw himself as the humble servant submitting to God's anointed king. He was on his guard morally.
He knew he had to be careful.
Exactly. But with Nabal, David feels entitled. He provided a service, he expects a culturally mandated return, and instead his pride is just publicly humiliated in front of his own troops.
Oh, so it's an ego thing.
Entirely. In the Nob story, we saw a lie born out of pure fear. Here we see a premeditated massacre driven by a bruised ego and honestly unrecognized entitlement.
It really highlights how dangerous unrecognized entitlement is for a leader.
It's incredibly destructive.
I mean, he is literally marching off to become a warlord over a personal slight.
Yeah.
But the massacre doesn't actually happen.
No, it doesn't.
Because Nabal's wife, Abigail, intercepts David on the road. And she brings food, sure, but more importantly, she brings this incredible emotional intelligence.
She is brilliant in this scene.
She is. She essentially holds up a mirror to David and says, do you really want this blood on your hands when you become king? Is this the legacy you want?
And look at the mechanism of what happens next. David stops.
He actually listens.
Yes. He listens to a woman who has absolutely no formal authority over him. He immediately recognizes his own hubris and he repents.
Just a complete 180.
He actually praises God for using her to intercept his anger. It's a masterclass in the necessity of wise counsel.
It really is.
You know, hot anger almost turns him into a monster, but a willingness to receive brutal feedback, even from an unexpected source, averts the disaster.
So we've seen how impulsive, fear-based lies and hot anger cause collateral damage.
Right.
But what happens when the fear isn't a split-second instinct,
Yeah.
but this slow, calculated dread of losing your reputation?
That is a completely different scenario.
Yeah, that completely changes the architecture of the sin. We have to talk about Bathsheba and Uriah.
Yes, we do. If Nob and Nabal were impulsive, this is cold, calculated, multi-layered deception.
It's chilling.
It really is the ultimate case study in crisis management gone wrong.
Right, so if you're listening, you probably know the setup. David stays home from the war, which is his first mistake.
While his men are fighting.
Right. And he sees Bathsheba bathing on her roof, sends for her, and commits adultery. But the actual act of adultery is really just the catalyst here.
It's the match that starts the fire.
Exactly. Because when she conceives, David goes into a full-blown cover-up.
He panics.
Yeah. And I like to think of this like technical debt in software engineering.
Oh, that's an interesting comparison.
Yeah, so you write a terrible piece of code to patch a bug quickly, but then you have to rewrite the entire operating system just to hide that one bad line.
And eventually the whole system crashes.
Exactly.
That is a perfect analogy. That original sin was opportunistic, but the cover-up requires systemic malice.
Right.
So David recalls Bathsheba's husband, Uriah, from the front lines. And the initial plan is simple. Get Uriah to go home, sleep with his wife, and pass the pregnancy off as his.
But Uriah throws a major wrench in the whole operation.
He really does.
Because he actually has integrity. He refuses to sleep in a comfortable bed with his wife while his fellow soldiers are camped out in open fields.
It's amazing.
David even tries to get him drunk to lower his inhibitions, and Uriah still refuses.
He won't compromise.
No, Uriah is acting as this incredible moral foil to David. The soldier is acting more like a king than the king himself.
Exactly. And because Uriah won't play along, David escalates from manipulation to outright murder.
He crosses the line completely.
He writes a letter to his military commander, Joab, ordering him to place Uriah at the front of the fiercest fighting and then to pull the troops back so Uriah is killed.
And what's wild is, and this is an incredibly chilling detail, David sends that execution order back to the front lines carried in Uriah's own hands.
It's so deeply cynical.
It is. So Uriah is killed, and David marries Bathsheba.
Job done, or so he thinks.
Right. Now, the sources point out that in 1 Kings 15.5, this specific event, the matter of Uriah the Hittite, is singled out as the major exception to David's otherwise faithful life.
Yes, it is.
So, why this one? Was it the sheer abuse of the state apparatus? I mean, he literally weaponized the military to cover up a personal indiscretion.
It is the ultimate abuse of power. You have to remember, Israelite kings, unlike their Egyptian or Babylonian counterparts, they were supposed to be subject to the law, not above it.
They weren't immune.
Right. And in this one sustained cover-up, David broke multiple core commandments. He coveted, he committed adultery, he bore false witness through deceit, and he committed premeditated murder.
All in one go.
Exactly. He leveraged the entire weight of the state to crush a loyal subordinate. And that is why the prophet Nathan is sent to confront him.
And Nathan doesn't just call him out. He drops a theological anvil on him.
He really does.
And to David's credit, he confesses. Again, he doesn't try to execute Nathan for treason, which a normal ancient king absolutely would have done.
Oh, instantly.
But the consequences Nathan lays out are just devastating. He tells David, "The sword shall never depart from your house."
Because the blast radius of systemic deception doesn't just disappear with an apology.
It lingers.
It does. The text outlines a gruesome generational causal chain after this. David's son Amnon rapes his half-sister Tamar.
Gosh.
Then another son, Absalom, murders Amnon in revenge.
It just spirals.
It does. Later, Absalom stages a full-blown coup, drives David out of Jerusalem, and publicly violates David's concubines on the roof of the palace.
The very same place David's sin started.
Exactly. It comes full circle.
That is such a heavy reality to sit with. A private moment of lust and a desperate cover-up exploded into decades of national instability and family bloodshed.
Yeah.
But the sources are very clear about one thing. David does receive total spiritual forgiveness.
He does.
He writes Psalm 51 out of this deep, agonizing repentance. God even blesses David and Bathsheba's next son, Solomon.
Who becomes the next king?
Right. But the earthly fallout remained. Forgiveness doesn't mean immunity from the consequences of your choices.
It doesn't, and that transitions us perfectly into the fourth major failure our sources detail, which moves from a private moral cover-up to massive public administrative hubris. I'm talking about the census of 2 Samuel 24.
Okay, I have to stop you there because, honestly, to a modern listener, this one makes the least sense.
And you get that a lot.
David orders his commander to count all the fighting men in Israel. Why is counting your army a sin? I mean, every modern nation conducts a census.
Right.
Why does this trigger a divine judgment?
Well, it requires understanding the specific legal and theological framework of ancient Israel.
Okay, break it down for us.
First, counting the fighting men was an assertion of military self-reliance. David was shifting his trust from God's provision to the sheer mathematics of his army.
Like he was measuring his own strength.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But second, and more importantly, it bypassed strict rules laid out in the book of Exodus. According to the law, a census required every counted person to pay a half-shekel offering of atonement.
Wait, why did they have to pay just to be counted?
To acknowledge that the people belonged to God, not to the king.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. By counting them without the atonement offering, David was essentially commodifying the Israelites. He was treating them as his personal property, his own measure of power.
So it was a massive ego trip on a national scale?
Precisely. And even Joab, who, as we've seen, is a pretty ruthless, pragmatism-first kind of military commander, even he pushes back and warns David not to do it.
When Joab is your moral compass, you know you're in trouble.
Exactly. But David insists.
Which leads to what I can only describe as the worst multiple-choice test in history.
It really is.
God offers David 3 choices for his punishment: 7 years of famine, 3 months of fleeing from enemies, or 3 days of pestilence.
And David chooses the pestilence.
Right, he throws himself on the mercy of God rather than human enemies. But the asymmetry here is staggering. 70,000 citizens die.
It's an unimaginable toll.
Right. A leader's internal quiet sin of pride, just wanting to measure how big and powerful his army is, costs 70,000 rank-and-file people their lives.
It is a terrifying lesson on how the internal state of a leader cascades down to the masses. A leader's private hubris always eventually becomes a public tax.
That's a powerful way to frame it.
And the destruction is only halted when an angel stands ready to destroy Jerusalem itself.
Right at the gates.
Yeah. The plague stops when David intercedes, takes full public responsibility, and goes to purchase a place called Araunah's threshing floor to offer a sacrifice.
Let's dig into that detail for a second. Why a threshing floor? I know the text mentions it later becomes the site of the temple in Jerusalem, but what is the functional metaphor there?
Oh, it's brilliant. Think about the mechanics of a threshing floor.
Okay.
It's a high, windy place where harvested grain is crushed and thrown into the air.
Right.
So the wind can blow away the useless chaff, leaving only the heavy, valuable wheat behind.
Wow.
Yeah, it is the ultimate agricultural metaphor for judgment and purification. In that moment, David's pride, his military reliance, his ego that was all chaff being blown away by a catastrophic judgment.
And what was left was the wheat.
Exactly. What was left was a broken, humbled king who finally understood that his strength didn't come from his numbers.
He actually says, "I have sinned greatly. I have done very foolishly." He doesn't blame the military commanders this time.
No, he takes it all on himself.
So we have these 4 massive, highly destructive failures. A survival lie that slaughtered a town, a vengeful ego trip that almost wiped out a household, a calculated cover-up involving murder, and a proud census that killed 70,000 people.
It's a heavy resume.
It is. Which leads to a really difficult synthesis question. If these are the events the text highlights, what about the everyday flaws?
Right.
How can someone with a track record that reads like an ancient mafia boss still be summarized by the biblical text as a man after God's own heart? Is it just a posthumous PR spin?
It's not a spin at all, actually. It's a radically different definition of what makes a person good.
How do you mean?
Well, biblical text never claims David was flawless. In fact, it leans heavily into the pervasive nature of human failure. The sources reference passages like Jeremiah 17.9, which describes the human heart as deceitful above all things.
So everyone is flawed.
Exactly. And if you read David's own writings, like Psalms 19, 51, 139, he is constantly agonizing over his own hidden faults.
Right.
His selfish ambitions, his impure thoughts.
He literally prays, "Cleanse me from hidden faults."
Yes.
He knew there was a whole iceberg of failure underneath the surface of these 4 massive events.
Precisely. The text doesn't catalog every single daily arrogance or unguarded thought because it isn't a ledger.
It's not just a list of pros and cons.
No, it is a narrative of redemption. The unrecorded sins were absolutely present, but the ancient writers are trying to show us a macro-level reality.
So when 1 Kings 15.5 says David did not turn aside from God's commands, except for that massive Bathsheba and Uriah incident,
Yeah.
it isn't demanding moment-by-moment perfection.
Not at all.
It's talking about the overall trajectory, like a ship navigating across an ocean.
I like that.
You might get blown off course by a hurricane or drift because you fell asleep at the wheel, but the defining characteristic is that you keep waking up, checking the compass, and violently reorienting yourself back to true north.
Reorienting is the perfect word for it. The goal presented in these sources isn't to walk through life without ever stumbling.
Because that's impossible.
The text frames flawless perfection as impossible for humanity. The goal is to maintain a pattern of quick confession and deep repentance.
Right.
When Saul failed, he made excuses, he built monuments to himself, and he hunted his rivals.
He doubled down on his pride.
Exactly. But when David failed, even though it sometimes took a prophet holding his feet to the fire to make him see it, he eventually broke down, took responsibility, and changed his trajectory.
He owned it.
He never shifted his ultimate allegiance to other gods. He always dragged himself back to the starting line of grace.
And that brings us to the core tension we've been circling this entire time. Forgiveness can restore your internal peace. It can reset your trajectory and put you back on true north. But it does not magically erase the earthly consequences of your actions.
No, it doesn't.
You don't get to just pray the blast radius away.
And we are so deeply tempted to do exactly that, aren't we?
Oh, absolutely.
When we make a catastrophic error, we want to pray for the problem to just vanish. We want the PR team to sweep it under the rug.
Just delete the tweet and move on.
Right. But the model we see in David's life is about praying through the problem.
Praying through them.
Yes. You have to walk through the fallout of the avalanche you started. You have to face the music of your actions and let the painful process of walking through those consequences actually forge new character in you.
It's a sobering reality, but, I actually find it deeply hopeful.
How so?
Because the text insists that even in the midst of generational trauma and massive public failure, the restoration of the person's soul is always possible.
That's very true.
The worst thing you've done doesn't have to be the last word about who you are.
It requires an incredible amount of courage to live that way, though.
It does.
It requires abandoning the instinct to hide and choosing instead to stand in the light, flaws and all.
Which brings us right back to where we started with that imaginary PR manager.
Oh, right.
Imagine having to publish an unedited, brutal biography of your absolute worst moments. The lies, the ego trips, the cover-ups. It's terrifying.
Truly terrifying.
But I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over today, building on everything we've just explored.
Okay.
If your absolute worst mistakes, your most selfish decisions, and their entire ripple effects were recorded for all of history to read, would you be defined forever by the failure itself? Or, like the subject of our deep dive today, would you be defined by how quickly you stopped hiding, took responsibility, and changed the trajectory of your life?
That's a lot to think about.
It is. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the things you read, keep looking for the mechanisms behind the history, and join us for the next exploration.
Oh Lord, you know my heart. I read about a king who walked so close with you, a man after your own heart, yet he stumbled too. He lied in fear, he burned with angry fire. He counted armies, lost his way for a while. But even in his deepest fall, you whisper truth that speaks to us all. Not perfection in every breath I take, not flawless steps or a sinless heart to break. It's not about perfection, it's about direction. A heart that sometimes veers, yet turns in quiet repentance. Did not turn aside, oh take every thought captive. I pray right through the storm. Flee the sin that whispers, I won't linger anymore. Mind renewal, a new heart, not one time but every day. Lord, draw me gently on your way. This heart can be deceitful, bent toward the dark. Evil thoughts arise and try to leave their mark, but your mercy shines the brightest in all my mess. Grace upon grace for every hidden yes. Like David cried for cleansing in the songs he sang. Create in me a clean heart, this is what I bring. Not one time fixes, not a single prayer away. It's a lifelong journey, walking in your grace. It's not about perfection, it's about direction. A heart that sometimes fears, yet turns in quiet repentance. Did not turn aside, holding steady through the fight, running back to mercy in the stillness of the night. I take every thought captive, I pray right through the storm. Flee the sin that whispers, I won't linger anymore. Mind renewal, a new heart, not one time but every day. Lord, draw me gently on your way. I don't pray my problems away, I pray through them, here I stay. You know my heart completely, every secret, every stain. Yet you still call me your own, forever loved by name. The pull of sin is real, but it's not the final word. It's the place where your mercy is most beautifully heard. It's not about perfection, it's about direction. A heart that sometimes veers, yet turns in quiet repentance. Did not turn aside, I fix my eyes on you. Steadfast in your mercy, making all things new. Take every thought captive, pray right through the night. Flee the sin, renew my mind, hold me in your light. New heart, new day, lifelong I pursue. Jesus, I am coming home to you. Not perfection, but direction. Lord, keep my heart returning to you.